Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CW Live. My name's Chris Webb, Head of Communications at CW. A really important session tonight for our RMPFS members who are cleaners, who are engineers, thousands of which who will be getting ballot papers this week in a huge and very important national ballot for strike action. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by National Officers Mark Boach and Carl Maiden. Evening, gents.
Evening, Chris.
Yeah, good to have you both with us. So straight into it, really. So this session is going to be about why it is so important that you get out there when that ballot paper lands later in the week, because obviously we're aware that, you know, there's a strike in Royal Mail tomorrow, so it won't be landing with you tomorrow, but it will land with you sometime this week, and why it is so important that you get out there and you use your vote and you vote yes and you back this trade union so we can deliver you a proper pay terms and conditions agreement. Before going into some wider questions, I'm going to ask both Mark and Carl to do a bit of scene setting, let you know where we are with the company, and start the process of, you know, setting out why it's so important that we get your vote in this national ballot. So, Mark, if I can ask you first, buddy, to give an overview.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for joining. It's really important, as Chris said, that members participate in the ballot. Our members in PFSL have been heroic through the pandemic, have done everything that they has been asked of them and everything they possibly could do, and have helped to keep the company running, you know, particularly during the pandemic when, you know, everyone was putting themselves on the line effectively as key workers, and our members in PFSL and our cleaners, and Carl obviously speak for the engineer, building maintenance engineers, but the cleaners went above and beyond the call of duty, and without the cleaners' hard work, without their efforts, and without their, you know, doing the deep cleans, carrying out the touch point cleaning, you know, that without that, obviously Royal Mail would not have been able to continue working. The buildings wouldn't have been able to have been open, and the service wouldn't have been able to have been given to Royal Mail's customers. And importantly as well, the efforts that were a key part of the pandemic for the British public also wouldn't have been able to have happened if not for the hard work of our cleaners and the building engineers. So our members, our cleaning members, deserve to be rewarded. You know, we've made some progress with PFSL, but not enough progress in terms of the headline. Similar to the position from our members in Royal Mail on pay, Royal Mail, you know, are pleading effectively poverty, saying that they can't afford this, they can't afford that, and you know, we're left in a position where our cleaning members and our engineering members, you know, deserve a decent pay rise, and that is what we're pushing for, and that's what we've where we are now in terms of the ballot. So that is where we are. Our cleaners absolutely deserve to be treated better, and I'm sure Carl will say the same for the engineering, building engineers. You know, the offers and what's been put on the table is not acceptable. We're not in a place where we can, you know, anywhere near, you know, pushing forward with an agreement, and that is why we're balloting our members, because we've reached the end of the line in terms of the discussions at this stage, in terms of the headlines in particular on pay.
Thank you, Mark. Excellent. Carl, you want to cover sort of some wider introduction, and also I know you want to specifically talk to our engineering members.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and you know, thanks everyone for joining. This is an important session. They might be smaller in numbers, but it's no less important group of workers for the union. And you know, I have responsibility for engineers and the generic admin, and I want to echo what Mark said. They were heroes during the dispute. Without them going into the workplace and keeping the workplace being able to function, then indeed, you know, I think that what the pandemic has done is raise the profile of the work that these people have done, and that they no less need to have a pay.
Well, looks like we've lost Carl there for a second. on a live show. We'll get him back in. Here he is. You back, Carl?
Okay.
These are the things
Sorry,
that
Chris,
happen.
I don't know what happened there. I lost a bit of connection.
That's all right, mate. These are the things that happen when you're live. Carry on where you were, buddy.
Yeah, so these workers no less deserve a cost of living pay rise than any other group of workers, and they were heroes during the pandemic. And what it has done is highlighted the work that they do that perhaps was taken for granted before. So, we, as Mark says, we have been meeting with RMPFS. Unfortunately, whilst we have made some progress on some of the smaller issues, the bigger issues, we haven't made enough progress on. So therefore, that's why we've served notice and we'll have the dispute in RMPFS.
Brilliant, buddy. So, Mark, I'm going to come back because I think it was the back end of last week that the company came out and said, look, we are listening. Here's what we're looking to do. There were maybe one or two changes from what we've talked about in their proposal to what we've talked about our members previously. Can you outline what their latest proposal is? And I suppose, more critically, as members get their ballot paper, why it's not good enough for the trade union at this point?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just to explain that slightly different to the dispute in Royal Mail, where our members in Royal Mail have been balloted twice, one on operational change, the other on pay. In PFSL, our agenda is a combination of both the need for a decent pay rise, not just to reward our members for the heroic work that they carried out during the pandemic, but also obviously to deal with the running away cost of living that, and the pressures that's putting on everybody, particularly those on low pay. So it's about pay, both in terms of reward for efforts, but also to deal with the cost of living crisis. In addition to that, in PFSL, because of historical factors, particularly with the previous joint venture with Romek, and there's a checkered sort of history of the PFSL, the contracts and all the rest of it in terms of it being previously joint ventured with Romek. That was brought back into house a few years ago, and what we've got in PFSL is some anomalies, particularly with terms and conditions across the board. So, for example, and I'll go through, Chris, in response to PFSL's latest offer, and they had made a latest offer. I think that came over on Thursday afternoon. That is that on mobile cleaners, they're still saying that that's a 50 pence per hour increase is on the table, but that hasn't changed. Some of the things that have changed, and it does get slightly complicated, but to explain it, on the Real Living Wage Foundation increase that cleaners were put on to in April of this year, and that was because the union pushed PFSL to pay our cleaners the Real Living Wage increase. By doing that, what that left was some anomalies, because the Real Living Wage Foundation calculate London pay range differently, or the London weighting differently. They have one sort of unique or one total boundary payment. I think that's £11.05, whereas historically in Royal Mail there is an inner and outer London pay range. So the uplift for the Real Living Wage Foundation to cleaners in April, what that meant was that a certain amount, I think it was about 93 cleaners in London, stood still and didn't get any increase out of that. What PFSL have now put on the table is £1,000 pro rata lump sum, pro rata part-timers. They've also increased on some other things, some of the associated benefits. So, for example, in holiday pay, the move to our members in Royal Mail that have gone on to pay while we're on leave, PFSL are now saying that they want to have a mirrored arrangement for cleaners and building maintenance engineers backdated to 2 years, so that they are positive things. And on maternity, paternity, also to mirror the same arrangements that exist in Royal Mail Group, plus on annual leave entitlement and increase for new joiners. So there's been some progress. But the real key issue, Chris, and the real issue that is between us, there's two actually. One is headline pay, because they're still saying for our cleaners that those on the national rate are not going to get an increase. Now, they're saying that's because they got an increase in April the 1st because they were moved to the Real Living Wage Foundation rate, which is true, but they only did that because the union pushed the company to increase pay. But that was, and the agreement on that, the joint statement we signed on that is very clear that that was without prejudice to this year's pay outcome and without prejudice to the outcome of formal talks. And so the company is still not prepared to move on basic pay. And the other elements we've still got issues with, aside from pay and aside from those other bits and pieces, is on pensions, where we want a faster route directly for our members in PFSL to get the same benefits as our members in Royal Mail Group. We accept and we understand that would have to be a flight path, but at the moment, all PFSL are offering is a sort of an improvement, which is welcome, but it isn't sufficient. So really, they're the issues that are at odds. I think the crux of the situation at the moment is on headline pay. I think although PFSL are a separate business unit, I think they're really tied in to the overall Royal Mail Group position, so they can't move on headline pay. So they're the real sort of outstanding points, the sticking points. But they have made some further offers. They're only doing that because of the pressure that we're all putting on. And when I say we, I mean all of us, which is why it's really important that you support the union and you return the ballot papers and get a yes vote, because we're confident that we will still make further improvements, particularly on headline pay, on the national rate, and some of the associated issues.
Thank you, Mark. That's fantastic. Carl, did you want to add anything on their offer, specifically for engineers or overall, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, Chris, I think what Mark said is absolutely right. We've only got to where we are because of the threat of us balloting so far, and they have moved some way towards us. So I have responsibility for the engineers and the generic admin, and the makeup of the pay deal is different to what Mark has outlined. And I will ask people not to get carried away with the headline figures because there's no detail behind it, even though it's not enough. We know that even within the other dispute, Royal Mail have been peddling 5.5, and it doesn't really come to 5.5. Well, RMPFS have done the same. So for our engineers, all they're actually offering on a pay rise is 2%. They're then saying that there would be another 1.5% on delivery of the engineering transformation plan. The problem is the engineering transformation plan hasn't even been put together yet, so we don't know what that looks like. And we certainly ain't going to be signing up blind or to a blank check of delivering something that hasn't even been negotiated yet. Even on the incentive scheme, so for the engineers, it's a very similar build to the other proposal. They're then saying that there's an option of 1.5 for an incentive scheme, but there's no detail behind that incentive scheme. And an incentive scheme is only as good as if you can make some money out of it. So again, we're not going to be signing up to that without knowing what it is. For our generic admin, what they've said is, well, we've got the 2% and we want to have further talks on that. So it's quite clear that the whole deal hasn't been thought through. And my opinion is that, quite clearly we served notice last week and they just wanted to put something out there to say we've made an offer to the union to try and get people, thinking that, oh, guess what? We won't need to go on strike because things are going well. Well, the message from us is quite clearly that when you get your ballot paper, we need you to return it with a yes vote. That will then allow us to have, the best possible chance in negotiations of getting the best deal possible. As Mark says, they have come towards us, but this is nowhere near anywhere near what the end deal will look like, because it just ain't good enough.
Thank you, Carl. That's really useful, buddy. I want to talk, Mark, if I can, about, I suppose, it's been a significant period of time since this group of members has had a ballot paper, has had, faced the potential of industrial action. I want to just talk about the importance of people using their vote and casting a vote, and how that can strengthen yours and Carl's and the other negotiators' hands in the coming weeks and months. I mean, just how vital it is that every cleaner, every engineer that gets their ballot paper later this week just immediately turns it around and gets it back.
I mean, you said it is absolutely. It's vital that people engage. I mean, I'd say that to our branches as well. A lot of our cleaning members in particular may be part-time. A lot of them are part-time and may only be in delivery offices quite often when the delivery members have gone out. And so no one really has much contact with the cleaners. And that includes some branches and some of our reps. So I would, first of all, urge all the branches and reps to make sure that you engage with our cleaners. In turn as well, the cleaners rep, we've got cleaners reps in place, that they also engage with branches. We're trying to put as much communication out as we can do to help branches. But it's really important, particularly for our cleaning members and also the engineers. I know some of those are itinerant as well, don't have a base, so it's always more difficult to organise and to stay actively communicated with those people. But it's really vital that we get the yes vote because of not just because of the threshold. We need the threshold because that's the legal requirement in order to give us a mandate. But we want to be in the same and similar position to that of which we're in with Royal Mail on the main group ballots, where we're saying very confidently that because of the turnouts and because of the overwhelming yes votes, that we're speaking with real authority. Now, cleaners and people on low pay really deserve that. So it's absolutely vital that people connect. It's absolutely vital that cleaners engage. I know maybe some cleaners feel disenfranchised, but this is your opportunity to feel franchised or to get franchised, get engaged with the process, and to make sure that you give us collective strength in order to improve your working lives, your terms and conditions overall. We're pretty confident that we'll do that. We've already made some inroads. It's not enough. That's why we're balloting, but it's really important that you stay united and you engage. So that's the real message, Chris.
Thanks, Mark. It's absolutely spot on. Carl, I want to ask you and Mark actually about the point around, the levels of commitment from our members in terms of relating to the pandemic. Obviously, the levels of commitment are fantastic at any time, but two groups of workers here that, like many of our CWU members, went above and beyond during the pandemic, and then their reward is this say about like almost the debt of honor that the company owes our members for keeping the company going during that period.
Yeah, and the company should be embarrassed from offering this after what our members have done, because what you need to remember is when there was an outbreak in the office, it was the cleaners and the engineers. They didn't have the option of not going in. In some cases, in the beginning, it was without PPE. So they were going in to do or making it safe for everybody else. I think everyone within Royal Mail Group appreciates what they did during the pandemic to keep the offices open, because let's be clear, without the cleaners and the engineers, them offices wouldn't have stayed open. That would have meant that we couldn't have provided the service that we did to the public. So they are very much a part of this as anybody else. And for the company not to recognise that, and I think your words are debt of honour, a decent pay rise so they can continue a standard of living, that they deserve it and more.
Thanks, Carl. Spot on. I mean, when you talk you think back to the pandemic and the images of certain offices due to outbreaks having to be closed down, and then our cleaning members giving them a deep clean. At a time when, if you think back to the commencement of the pandemic, there was a hell of a lot of fear about, right across the country. But those people were literally on the front line, weren't they? And maybe a word or two from you on that, given you directly represent the cleaners.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm thinking about that as you're saying it, and I know how many issues there were almost like on a daily basis, because people were and understandably so, because some of our members died, and all of our members were affected. No one hasn't got family members or friends that either have been very ill through or were very ill through COVID, or indeed, sadly died through COVID. So our members are really on the front line for that, particularly on, our cleaning members in order to keep buildings running, in order to make sure that the operation ran. And, there were a lot of issues during that time, the PPE and all the rest of it, completely inadequate. The company didn't recognise that quickly enough, same as the country didn't, and the government were very slow to react in the initial stages of the pandemic, and our cleaners were on the front line of that completely. The other thing I think that the pandemic really highlighted, and I think the company are recognising this, is the provision that exists within Royal Mail for cleaning, because over the years it's been an easy target for Royal Mail just to cut back on. Actually, not just cleaning; it's the maintenance of the buildings as well. So the whole fabric of the operation. I mean, some of the buildings are in a terrible state. The cleaning has not been good enough. That's not a fault of the cleaners, but it's a fault of the fact that the contracts over a successive period of time have just been cut back to a level that hasn't allowed for decent provision of cleaning and building maintenance, just down to cost. And I think what the pandemic has done, as well as highlight the fantastic efforts of our cleaning members and the engineering members, is show up the fact that the contract now needs to be re-looked at and re-evaluated, which I think is another thing that we've pushed the company hard on. I know that they're looking at that. So they're all aspects. But I suppose really the other thing is there's a common theme at the moment, isn't there? Everyone who's being clapped and recognised during the pandemic, and the cleaners, the nurses, the paramedics, our postmen and women, key people in society, people working in shops, retail, grocery, and all the rest of it, who were clapped and applauded and put on a pedestal, and rightly so, and they should be, and they should continue to be so. All of a sudden now, companies are just turning their back on those people, and how quickly the very rich and people at the top of the companies forget about those moments and who really came through for the country and for the company during that period. So that angers me greatly, but sadly that is a position that we're in at the moment.
Thank you, buddy. Carl, I wondered if you had a message for our branches. I think that would be useful at this point to cover. So what you're thinking in terms of getting the message out there, how they can help. I know they're very busy. They've got the Royal Mail dispute, they've got the Post Office dispute, but just how important is that every branch is out there engaging with our RMPFS members and making sure that they get this vote out?
Yeah, and not underestimating the work and how busy branches are, Chris. As I've said earlier, we want branches to engage with this group of members. We don't want any group of members left behind. It's as important as all the other ballots that we've done. And, you know, as you will know, Chris, because you've done the comms for them, we've had ballots in Royal Mail, we've had ballots in the post office, we've had ballots in the TNFS constituency, and the branches engaged during them ballots with the members, making sure that the members were returning their ballot papers, making sure they were kept updated with what's going on when we're sending stuff out. And really, we want them, the branches, to do exactly the same thing again. Every branch, every rep, engage with, you know, your cleaners and your engineers and the admin workers, just to make sure that, you know, they feel as included as all the other groups. They are a small group. This is a small group of people when you compare to 115,000 in Royal Mail. However, you know, the need of these people is no less than any other group of workers. So I really would encourage and ask all branches. We do have some RMPFSL members in telecom and financial services branches as well. So it's every branch and every rep to be engaging with the members and making sure that they get the same support as the other groups of members have had.
Thanks, Carl. That's brilliant, mate. Mark, a few questions, if I can, just before getting us back on track around. We had quite a few members asking about the actual Royal Mail group dispute. People were saying a couple of questions. One, can RMPFS admin members be forced to support the Royal Mail operation during the strike? And the second question we've had in is from our members who are saying, do they have to cross a picket line? A lot of members, a lot of our cleaners particularly, and engineers, saying they just don't want to go across picket lines that will obviously be formed tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, on the picket lines, look, we have to be very clear from a legal position. We've got 2 ballots in Royal Mail. Obviously, the one on tomorrow is on pay. But our members in PFSL at this stage are not balloted. And so the advice we have to give, and we have given it to our branches, is that our members who are not balloted should work normally. Obviously, we're now undertaking our own industrial action ballot of PFSL members, so we don't want to jeopardise that either, as well as the Royal Mail one on pay. So we would ask all our members to work normally, but we do recognise, you know, I'd be one of those people myself where there is no way that I'd want to cross a picket line, and I wouldn't want to do that. But where that happens, we will deal with each case on its merits, and you know that is individuals' own conscience, and we will deal with those in the right way. The discussions, to be fair, that we have had with PFSL on this position is that I think they will take a pragmatic approach to it, slightly different as well. As a further complication in so much as Royal Mail have decided not to even open many of the sites that our members work in, and where there isn't anywhere within reasonable distance for our cleaning members to go because their site is closed on the strike day, then the company has said that they will pay the individuals and they will deal with it in that way. So that's really the message. We will deal with each individual circumstance, but the position from a legal point of view is that they're 2 separate ballots, and where our members have not been balloted and they're not included in the Royal Mail ballot, then obviously they should work as normally where that's possible, of course, given what I've just said, in so much as some of the buildings not being open.
Thank you, Mark. Really useful, buddy. Carl, another question that's linked to that from our members, which you've seen coming through, is that people wondering, like, obviously being positive and saying, like, once we get the yes vote, which is great, so a lot of work to do before that takes place, but once we get to the yes vote, will we consider naming action for our PFSL members on the same date as we do Royal Mail Group if that dispute is still going on at that point?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Chris, that is an option and something that we will look at. Why wouldn't we want all, you know, different groups of members together when we're out? But we do have to get the yes vote first. You more than anybody will know that's not easy. There's a lot of hard work that goes into getting the yes vote. So we do need the yes vote. We need it to be a resounding yes vote, so that the business will sit up and actually take notice. Because very often we get accused as the leaders and being in the room of, you know, not representing our members' views, and we know that's done to try and sort of wind us up. But what a ballot does is it does show that the members are behind you, as we've shown in all the other ballots that we've done within the union, and other unions have done as well.
Thanks, Carl. Excellent, buddy. Mark, I think we're at that point of the session where I'm going to ask you, if I can, just to give any both of you, just to give any final messages to the members, any roundup, and just give your final, I suppose, impassioned plea for them to get the vote out.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've said the reasons why we need to get the vote out. But I do want to make a passion plea, because, you know, I am very passionate about making sure that our cleaning members in particular, you know, they're the members I represent. Obviously, Cole represents the building maintenance, engineers, admin. But from the cleaners' point of view, we're absolutely determined to get our cleaners the best possible deals and outcomes that we can. Now, the company at the moment are saying basically that, well, you add the uplift to the Real Living Wage Foundation rate on a national basis in April, that equates to 7% in some places, and basically that's it. You've had your pay rise, go away. Well, that ain't acceptable to us. That's not acceptable. We knew that when we tried to get the pay discussions underway, before the start of the year, but we also wrote in February. We've pushed the company all the way through because we could see the writing on the wall in terms of the cost of living crisis. And our members, particularly those on low pay, are going to feel the brunt of that more than anybody, which is why our cleaning members deserve a decent outcome. We have got a stretching agenda because it isn't just on pay, it's on all the other associated issues, on maternity, paternity, annual leave, etc., as well as pensions, which is another key one. And on pay and pensions in particular, we aren't there yet. It ain't good enough. The company signed up a joint statement with myself in April around, introducing the Real Living Wage Foundation rate. But at the bottom of that joint statement, and I'll read it, it says it is confirmed that these steps are taken to implement the company's commitment within the April 29 pay agreement. They are outside of the formal pay talks that will start in April this year, and any action now does not prejudice the outputs of these formal pay talks for 2022. They signed up to that. That is a very clear commitment that the increase to the Real Living Wage Foundation rate was a minimum, and that was without prejudice to the formal pay talks. Well, now we're in the formal pay talks, and they're saying, no, that's it. You've had your increase. That is not acceptable to us. The other thing I want to make an impassioned sort of plea, is the fact that the Real Living Wage Foundation organisation have brought forward their review. They do an annual review. They carry out an annual review normally with recommendations made in November. But because of the soaring cost of living crisis that's impacting everybody, particularly those on low pay, they've now brought that forward to September, and they're going to be making a recommendation through mid-September in terms of what companies should do in order to ensure that people can have, a half decent standard of living and security, etc., etc. So get your ballot papers, support the union. We're not there on pay. There's more we can do. We can only do that if everyone's together supporting us, and we'll do everything we absolutely can to get our members in PFSL the best possible outcome possible we can achieve.
Thank you, Mark. That's brilliant. Carl, your final message, buddy.
Yeah, Chris, if I can just pick up your the question earlier on, you asked about admin staff, because we do have admin staff, and they don't have to go down and support the operation if they're asked to. Their job is their own role, and under no circumstances should they try to be coerced into going down and doing the operational work of other groups of members. Firstly, as well, I want to congratulate all of our members and other unions who've already taken action, sticking up for their terms and conditions. And my plea is, let's get the vote out for RMPFS. These are often overlooked by the company and indeed sometimes by our members, that they're groups of workers that are taken for granted. We've proven during the pandemic that the work that they do is vital to where we are. You're going to get your ballot paper this week. As soon as the ballot paper comes, don't open it and put it with the rest of the post and go, oh, I'll go back to it later. Fill the form in, vote yes, get the ballot back in the post, and that will obviously then give us where we want. Both Mark and I are passionate about getting the right agreement for our members, and we can only do that with the backing of the members in the ballot. Of course, we will provide all the support that we can from headquarters, but we do rely on our branches, and we can't be everywhere. We can't be all over the country. So my plea is, please find the time. We understand how busy you are, but please find the time to go out, engage with our RMPFS members, and to our members themselves. Make sure that you get that ballot paper back nice and early. Let's get the yes vote, and then we can get back into the negotiations and look to improve what's already on offer. We've got, the business have started to come towards us just on the threat of a dispute. Imagine the power that Mark and I will have if we can go in there with a massive yes vote behind us, and the company have to look at that.
Thanks, Carl. So first of all, to say thank you to you, Carl, and Mark. I think it's been an excellent session. Loads of ground covered there. More importantly, though, than even Mark and Carl, is to say thanks to all of you who have tuned in and given up your evenings. We really do appreciate it. It means a lot to us, and we know how important your own time is for you. It's over to you, really. The union is you're gonna get a ballot paper. You're gonna have a home mailing setting out exactly why it's so important to vote. You're gonna get text messages from the union. You've got this session. And you've also got the word of mouth stuff that will come from your branches locally. There's going to be nobody left behind. Everyone's going to have more than enough information around this dispute. You now need to do your job, which is to cast your vote in this ballot and to vote yes and give your negotiators the strongest possible hand. We know that you're going to do that. So with that, take care, everybody, and we'll catch you all later.